So skipping boat docks is an excellent way to catch a bunch of big bass. I've seen a lot of guys over the years, whether they're guide clients, buddies, emails from readers or whatever, they have problems figuring out exactly how to get their jigs up under these docks. Now, normally I'm the type of guy that I truly believe simplicity rules all in bass fishing. I don't overthink things. That's just my personal style. But with this particular technique, again, it's something I do 12 months a year here. I really believe there's some specialized pieces of equipment that are important to be able to maximize your success. In my opinion, rod selection is critical. I think a medium heavy for skipping, let's say, a 1/2 ounce jig up underneath the boat dock. I think a medium heavy is too light because when you set that hook, it's hard to get that fish over any cross beams, pieces of metal, pieces of brush, something like that. But heavy action rods a lot of times are too stiff because they don't load enough on that back cast. So a lot of times with those heavy rods, you'll make that skip cast and it'll actually shoot, you'll pull your cast way too far and your accuracy's gone. So if you can find something that what I call like a medium heavy heavy or a heavy medium heavy, that's ideal. Now in particular, I found this one about 2 years ago. And I have been using it every single day since. It's a Daiwa Tatula Elite. It's a 7'1" heavy, but it's not as heavy as a lot of the other heavies out there. It's got more tip to it, so it helps you on that back cast load and skip that jig just like a pebble across the top of the water. You know, length is very much a personal preference. But for me personally, anything over like a 7'2", 7'4", I tend to pull my cast too much, and again, it kills my accuracy. But this 7'1", in my personal opinion, I'm 6'2". It's my sweet spot. I can do an underhand skip, and my rod tip doesn't hit the surface of the water or the side of my boat, the gunnel of my boat, and I can also do a sidearm cast, and it goes exactly where I need it to go without pulling it. Jig selection is also a huge part of this equation. Not all jigs are created equal. You can't go down the aisle and pick the cheapest jig or whatever and think that it's going to do the job automatically. There's certain things you need to look for. Now me personally, I like a rounded flat head of my skipping jigs. Now this one in particular is a Z-Man Cross Eyes flipping jig, and I like it because, again, it's got a super flat head right here. I mean, I've about worn the paint off of it. I've skipped it so much. So when this thing hits the surface of the water, there's very little resistance, to catch and dive up under the water. I can be 10, 12, maybe 15 feet in front of a boat dock and skip this thing to the seawall. And again, it's not because I'm any better than anybody. It's because of this jig design. So whether you choose this one or not, just look for something similar that has that smooth bottom to its head. And something else too that not many anglers do, I like to skip a swim jig underneath these docks because they've got a keel-shaped head. This is the Strike King Hack Attack Heavy Cover Swim Jig. It's a fairly basic swim jig, but it's got a keel-shaped head on it. And again, that helps you skip real well. It's got that flatness on the bottom of it. And, a lot of guys skip these docks, and they'll drag. Well, this, like a swim jig like this, can help you stay up in that water column. So if you're fishing for fry garters, suspended fish, and post-frontal high barometric pressure situations, I mean, they can just be sitting there suspended in the water column. And again, the guys that are just dragging, won't always catch those fish. So keeping your jig a little bit higher up sometimes can be the key. Trailer selection is also very important. And I say that because you don't want a trailer that's going to catch a bunch of water as your jig's skipping across the surface. If you have a bunch of dangly stuff on it, a bunch of crazy arms waving around, it's going to catch water, it's going to dive bomb into the water, and it's going to dive bomb the bass you're trying to catch, and you ain't going to catch that bass. So instead, I like to have something real simple, smooth, without a lot of appendages. So this one right here is a Strike King Rodent. It's one of my favorites. And I say that because of its simplicity. When you get it out of the package, these claws already come molded together. And I like to keep them like that. And I'll put it on the back of a jig, I'll bite with that about, what is that, about a 1/2 inch off. I'll bite that off, thread it up on my jig, skip it on the boat docks all day. It stays on the shank of the hook, and it's real durable, and it catches a bunch of fish. Now, if they don't bite that, one of my other favorites is a biwa armor crawl. And this thing doesn't look like much, does it? I mean, it just like a little chicken nugget. That's all it is. You put it on the back of a jig, it looks awesome. And when you skip that sucker, I mean, again, it's like that river rock. I mean, you can skip this from the front of the dock to the seawall, no problem. So that's something you definitely want to check out. Smooth, very few appendages, keep it simple. Black and blue, green pumpkin, watermelon red, that's it, man. Everybody's got their different thoughts on fishing line. You know, my particular thoughts are fairly simple. I have decided I kind of go with 17-pound test fluorocarbon, because if you go down to 15-pound test, you're gonna get your heart broke eventually. It's happened to me enough to know, I mean, learn from my mistakes. You know, you'll skip up under a dock, set the hook, wraps around the dock post a couple times, bink, comes off, and you're telling fish stories the rest of the day. But on the other end of that, if you go too heavy, if you go to with the 20 to 25 when you're skipping, you don't quite have the line manageability that you need to be able to make those long skip casts. That heavier diameter line, no matter what brand, likes to dig a little bit more. That's just how things work. So 17-pound test, 18-pound test, depending on the brand that you prefer, seems to be the sweet spot there. You ask any guy what reel they prefer, man, you're just asking to start an argument online. You know, people are gonna say, I like this brand. Well, you're stupid, I like this brand. Whatever brand that you affiliate with or like or prefer, that's all great. But just make sure that it's a high gear ratio. High gear ratio means that that every time you turn that handle, a bunch of line is coming to you. Again, real thick cover situations like skipping under a boat dock. When that fish bites, you've got to set the hook and eat up line as quick as you can. If you give that fish an inch, it's gonna take a mile and it's gonna break your dadgum heart. So again, guys, we don't need to turn this into rocket science, and I'm not trying to for you. But again, keep these tips in mind, and I do believe you're gonna become a little bit more proficient at skipping these boat docks. Whether you're hot and you've got sweat dripping all over like I do right now, or whether it's really cold and the fish are just lethargic. Just keep these tips in mind. I really do believe with the right gear and the right mindset, slow, steady, patient, that you're gonna catch a bunch of big fish this year using this technique.